Before another hour slips away, there is something resting at the edge of your heart that refuses to stay hidden any longer. Imagine opening a letter that somehow already knows every question you've been carrying, every silent conversation you've rehearsed, every moment you wondered whether love had forgotten your name. That is where this story begins. Not with certainty, but with a whisper so gentle that many people would mistake it for their own thoughts. Yet tonight, that whisper keeps repeating the same plea. Please, read this before it's too late. There are moments in life when two paths exist side by side, and they look almost identical. One slowly leads people farther apart without either of them realizing it. The other allows them to recognize what was always waiting beneath the surface. The difference between those paths is rarely a dramatic event. More often, it is a single moment of understanding. A moment almost missed because the world was simply too loud. Perhaps you've been wondering why certain memories refuse to leave you alone. Why one person's presence seems to echo through ordinary days without explanation. Why, just when you convince yourself to stop thinking about them, something unexpectedly reminds you of their smile, a familiar song, a passing stranger, a dream that feels strangely unfinished. Coincidence can explain many things. But stories of the heart often begin where coincidence runs out of words. This is not a promise about tomorrow. It is a fictional reminder that some of the most meaningful conversations never begin with perfect timing. They begin with courage, the quiet kind that asks someone to remain open even after disappointment has convinced them to close every door. Somewhere in this unfolding story, another soul is carrying questions of their own. Questions they never found the language to ask. Questions that stayed hidden behind ordinary conversations and polite smiles. If they could gather every unfinished sentence into one page, if they believed those words would finally reach you, perhaps that page would begin with an apology. Not because love disappeared. Because fear spoke louder than honesty. Fear has a remarkable talent. It convinces people that silence protects everyone. It whispers that waiting one more day will somehow make difficult conversations easier. Yet every sunrise quietly proves the opposite. Unspoken feelings grow heavier the longer they remain untouched. And that is why this imagined letter feels urgent. Not because time is running out in some dramatic way, but because hearts become exhausted from carrying what should have been shared. Can you remember the last time someone looked as though they wanted to say something, then simply smiled instead? Most people forget moments like that. Yet sometimes those unfinished expressions become the chapters we replay the longest. What if the words left unsaid were never meant to disappear? What if they simply waited for the right season to be understood? The strange thing about hope is that it rarely announces its arrival. It enters quietly, like morning light finding a room that believed darkness would stay forever. At first nothing seems different. Then, little by little, familiar shapes begin to appear. The same is true of healing. Many people expect healing to erase every scar. Instead, it teaches the heart how to carry its story without letting the story carry it. And perhaps that is why you've arrived here now. Not to receive every answer, but to discover that unanswered questions are sometimes invitations instead of endings. Imagine someone sitting alone with a message they've rewritten 100 times. Each version begins differently. Each version ends before the most important sentence. Their fingers pause over words they desperately want to send, yet uncertainty keeps asking, what if it's already too late? That single question has stolen more beautiful conversations than anger ever could. Still, hope refuses to surrender so easily. It waits patiently, believing that one honest moment can outweigh years of hesitation. There is another detail hidden inside this story. One that changes everything once it is finally understood. The imagined letter is not only about reaching another person. It is also about becoming someone who is willing to receive truth without resentment. Because even the most heartfelt apology cannot enter a heart that has locked every window. Forgiveness is not pretending pain never happened. It is deciding that pain will not write the final chapter. Think about that for a moment. Some endings only exist because both people believed the other had already stopped caring. How many beautiful beginnings have quietly disappeared beneath that misunderstanding? Perhaps more than anyone realizes. As this fictional message continues to unfold, another page is about to be revealed, a page that has remained folded until now because it contains the one confession neither heart expected to face. And when those words finally appear, they will challenge everything you thought this urgent message was truly about. The next page unfolds slowly, not because the truth is reluctant to appear, but because some truths lose their meaning when they arrive before the heart is ready to receive them. The confession waiting here is quieter than most people imagine. It is not filled with dramatic declarations. It begins with a single realization. I was listening to my fears while my heart was trying to tell me something completely different. That sentence changes everything. Fear often disguises itself as wisdom. It says, wait a little longer. Protect yourself. Don't risk disappointment. At first those thoughts sound reasonable. But over time, they build invisible walls so gradually that no one notices until the light can barely reach inside. Perhaps you've built a few of those walls yourself. Not because you wanted to hide, but because life convinced you that expecting too much would only invite more heartache. Yet even behind those carefully constructed walls, hope never completely disappeared. It simply became quieter. Like a candle burning in another room. Easy to forget. Impossible to extinguish. Now imagine that same unfinished letter resting on a table. Its pages are worn from being opened and folded again and again. Some lines have been rewritten so many times that only faint traces remain. Not because the feelings changed. Because finding the right words felt almost impossible. Have you ever searched for a sentence that could carry the weight of months, maybe years, of unspoken emotion? Some feelings refuse to fit inside ordinary language. That is why silence sometimes grows where love was trying to bloom. But silence has limits. Eventually, the heart begins asking questions that can no longer be ignored. What if honesty brings peace, even if it doesn't bring certainty? That question is the doorway this story has been walking toward from the very beginning. Not certainty. Not perfect outcomes. But peace. There is a difference. Certainty tries to control tomorrow. Peace gives today's heart room to breathe. And perhaps that is the gift heaven quietly places before every searching soul. Not a map of every future step, but enough light to take the next one with courage. As these moments unfold, another unexpected realization begins to emerge. The imagined soulmate in this story is not only hoping their words will be heard. They are hoping they will finally be understood. Those are two very different things. Anyone can hear words. Very few people truly understand what lives beneath them. Sometimes, "I'm fine" really means, "I'm tired of pretending." Sometimes, "Take your time" quietly means, "I've been waiting longer than you know." Sometimes silence itself becomes the loudest sentence in the room. Have you noticed how the deepest emotions rarely ask for attention? They simply wait. Patiently. Faithfully. Until someone chooses to look beyond appearances. There is beauty in that kind of waiting. But there is also sorrow. Because every passing season teaches the heart to wonder whether the opportunity has already drifted away. Still, hope continues to leave small reminders. A memory that arrives without warning. A conversation that feels strangely familiar. A dream that lingers after sunrise. None of these moments are offered as promises about the future. They are gentle invitations to remain open to love, grace, and healing, even when the path ahead cannot yet be fully seen. That openness changes people. Not all at once. But little by little. Like rain softening ground that once seemed impossible to reach. Then something unexpected happens. The letter reaches a paragraph that was almost torn away before anyone else could read it. The handwriting becomes unsteady. Not from fear anymore. From honesty. It says, "If I could ask for one thing, it wouldn't be another chance to rewrite the past. It would be the courage to tell the truth while there was still time to share it." Read those words again in your heart. They are not asking anyone to live without mistakes. They are inviting us to live without hiding behind them. That is where real freedom quietly begins. And yet, one final page remains sealed. No apology has prepared you for what it contains. Because hidden inside that last folded page is a memory that neither soul realized they had been carrying all along. A memory that will reveal why this message felt so urgent from the very first whisper. And once that page is opened, nothing in this story will look the same again. The final seal gives way without a sound. No flash of light. No dramatic interruption. Only the quiet feeling that something long forgotten has finally decided it is ready to be remembered. Inside the last folded page, there isn't a grand declaration of love. There isn't a list of regrets. There is only a memory. Small enough that most people would overlook it. Powerful enough to change everything. It speaks of an ordinary moment. The kind that seems insignificant while it's happening. Two people sharing a laugh that lasted only a few seconds. A glance that neither of them knew the other noticed. A goodbye that sounded completely routine, even though one heart secretly wished it could last a little longer. Life rarely announces which moments will become unforgettable. It simply lets us live them. Only later do we realize they quietly became part of who we are. The letter pauses there. Almost as if inviting you to search your own heart. Is there a memory you've returned to more than once? Not because it was perfect. Because it felt real. Real moments leave fingerprints on the soul. Years may pass. Entire seasons may change. Yet one sincere act of kindness can outlive 1,000 ordinary days. That is the strange beauty of love. It doesn't measure importance the way the world does. It treasures the little things. The conversations no one else remembers. The smiles no photograph captured. The encouragement offered at exactly the right time. Those moments become invisible threads, quietly holding hearts together even when distance tries to convince them otherwise. Then another sentence appears. One that almost wasn't written. "I thought you would remember my mistakes more than my heart." How many people carry that same hidden fear? They believe their failures became louder than their intentions. They wonder if one painful chapter erased every beautiful page that came before it. But grace tells a different story. Grace never ignores what happened. It simply refuses to let brokenness have the final word. And perhaps that is why this fictional message feels so deeply personal. Not because it claims to know your future, but because every human heart understands what it feels like to hope that it can still be seen for who it truly is. There is another mystery unfolding beneath the surface. The letter was never only about the imagined soulmate. It has quietly been reflecting something back to you all along. Every question written on those pages has an echo. Every regret has a mirror. Every hope has an invitation. Without realizing it, you've been reading two letters at the same time. One written by someone searching for the courage to speak. The other written by your own heart, in words too quiet to notice until now. Perhaps that's why certain lines seemed strangely familiar. Some truths don't enter through the mind first. They arrive through recognition. Like hearing a melody you've never learned, yet somehow already know. Take a slow breath and imagine standing beside a river at sunrise. The water never argues with the stones that slowed it yesterday. It simply keeps moving. Patiently. Faithfully. Always toward something greater. Healing often looks exactly like that. Not dramatic. Not instant. Just one steady step after another until peace begins to feel more familiar than fear. There is wisdom in realizing that the past can explain you without imprisoning you. Every scar has a story. But not every story has to become your identity. The voice within this letter grows softer now. Not because it has less to say. Because the most meaningful truths are almost always whispered. It says, "If our paths ever cross again, I don't want to meet the version of you that was shaped by disappointment alone. I hope to meet the version that remembered how to trust kindness, even after being hurt." What a remarkable hope. Not that every wound disappears, but that every wound eventually teaches compassion instead of bitterness. That kind of transformation cannot be rushed. It unfolds quietly. Choice by choice. Day by day. Then, just when it seems every page has been read, something unexpected happens. A smaller envelope slips from the back of the letter. No one mentioned it before. Its edges are worn, as though it has been carried for a very long time. Across the front, only 7 handwritten words appear. Open this only when your heart feels ready. No explanation follows. No hint about what waits inside. Only the unmistakable feeling that the message you've heard until now was never the destination. It was preparing you for what has been hidden inside that smaller envelope all along. And what it contains will ask a question that neither heart has ever dared to answer aloud. The smaller envelope rests quietly in your hands. For a moment, nothing happens. Not because it is empty, but because some messages ask for stillness before they ask for attention. The silence itself feels meaningful, like the pause between the final stars fading and the first light of dawn touching the horizon. Then, almost imperceptibly, the seal loosens. Inside is not another letter. It is a single page. At the very top, written in careful handwriting, are these words. If you have reached this page, it means you are no longer searching for perfection. You are searching for truth. There is something freeing about that realization. Perfection demands masks. Truth asks only for honesty. For so long, the imagined soulmate in this story believed they had to become flawless before speaking from the heart. They thought every unanswered question needed an explanation. Every mistake required a perfect apology. Every silence had to be justified. But hearts rarely heal through perfect words. They heal through genuine ones. The page continues. I kept waiting until I felt brave enough. Then one day I realized. Bravery wasn't arriving first. It was born the moment I decided to stop hiding. Those words linger. Not because they are complicated. Because they uncover something many people spend years trying to understand. Courage is rarely loud. More often, it is the quiet decision to be seen exactly as you are. No performance. No disguise. No carefully rehearsed version of yourself. Just truth. And somehow, truth has a way of reaching places that polished words never can. As you continue reading, the page begins describing a memory that neither person ever spoke about. It was an ordinary afternoon. Nothing extraordinary happened. No dramatic confession. No life-changing event. Just 2 people walking through a season of life without realizing they were becoming part of each other's story. One of them smiled. The other smiled back. Then they continued on, believing it was simply another passing moment. Years later, that ordinary exchange would become a reminder that the smallest acts of kindness often outlive our biggest achievements. People remember how they were made to feel. Long after they forget the exact words. That is why kindness echoes farther than we imagine. The page folds into another thought. What I admired most about you was never something the world could measure. It was the way hope kept returning to your heart, even after life gave you every reason to let it go. Pause there. How remarkable is hope? It does not deny pain. It simply refuses to let pain become the only voice worth listening to. Hope sits beside grief. It walks beside uncertainty. It survives unanswered questions. And somehow, it keeps looking toward tomorrow without demanding that tomorrow explain itself today. Then the handwriting changes. The letters become steadier. As though the person writing has finally stopped running from their own heart. I don't know what tomorrow holds. But I know this. If love is real, it never asks us to become someone else before we are worthy of receiving it. That sentence feels different. It doesn't promise an outcome. It offers peace. Because worth has never been something earned through flawless living. It has always been discovered by recognizing the value that was there from the beginning. The room in this story feels brighter now. Not because every mystery has been solved. Because the weight of pretending has finally begun to disappear. Yet one final surprise remains. As the page reaches its end, you notice something unusual. There is writing on the back. Just one paragraph. Almost overlooked. Almost left unread. It says, "There was one conversation I imagined more than any other. Not to explain the past. Not to change it. Only to say thank you. Thank you for teaching me that even unfinished stories can leave people better than they found them." What a beautiful thought. Some people enter our lives for longer than expected. Others stay only long enough to awaken something sleeping inside us. Neither journey is wasted. Every sincere connection leaves behind a gift. Sometimes that gift is love. Sometimes wisdom. Sometimes the strength to believe again. And just as you believe the message has finally reached its end, a faint line appears beneath the final sentence. It wasn't there before. Almost as if it had been waiting for this exact moment to reveal itself. It reads, "There is one last message, but it was never written on paper." No further explanation follows. Only the quiet invitation to discover where that final message has been waiting all along. A place no letter could ever fully capture, and where the story is about to take its most unexpected turn.